Professor Alex Van Den Heever from the Wits School of Governance joins us now to further talk about what he thinks this day actually means in modern society. Professor, it's great having you with us. Happy Freedom Day to you. Look, in our current reality versus what we're supposed to be celebrating today, what to you is the meaning of Freedom Day, particularly in this generation?
Well, what it means is that we have agency as individuals and as communities, both to do what we wish within society, but also to help determine the rules of the game. And sometimes the rules of the game don't work in your favor, but we also have agency, therefore, to change them. So freedom itself is always going to be limited and constrained, but we also have the ability to engage on the distribution of our explicit freedoms and unfreedoms. Because if we decide that we're going to travel on the left-hand side of the road, we've got a process by which society comes to that determination. You don't have the freedom to actually ride on both sides of the road. It's the formation of those rules that are very important. And they are the policies of government. And if they don't work out, the idea of freedom in this context is that you can change the government. You've also got an ability to choose who represents you in making the rules in society. Plus, you also have the freedom to challenge any rule that is being established within society. You can challenge it in the courts, and you can also challenge it by protesting or writing or researching against that particular rule that has been established. Those are the freedoms that we got in 1994 and are incredibly important. It doesn't mean that everything resolves itself immediately. It means that we as a society are in a strong position to actually impact on our own lives. It doesn't mean it happens perfectly overnight, but the point is, we've now had 30 years of trying to work out how to exercise our agency. We haven't always done it well, but that is the freedom we still have.
Professor, look, social cohesion has long been associated with this day as a means to actually bridge this historical racial as well as cultural divides that has as we morphed into the Rainbow Nation. But different initiatives that have been aimed at precisely these objectives have also promoted these. But yet it seems that the message is not getting across. Everyone just keeps to their side of the fence, as you alluded to earlier, and just pretends that we've accepted our differences.
Social cohesion implies that there is an acceptance of sort of diversity within society, and that we attempt to embrace it rather than exploit it for narrow purposes. But social cohesion gets made more difficult if many things within that society start to go wrong, because they create a basis for grievance and exploitation. So, for instance, South Africa has one of the most unequal distributions of income and wealth in the world. That is universally recognized as a problem of social cohesion. And it can then be exploited to actually, as was done under apartheid, you exploit basically the differences between communities and peoples as a way of trying to claim that you're addressing those grievances, which invariably is not true. Social cohesion requires that we have policies that are making sure that the disparities between people are narrowed over time considerably. Otherwise, it creates an environment in which people look for short-term solutions to what are invariably quite deep problems. But what we have experienced over the last 30 years is policies that haven't necessarily addressed that systematically. That is a problem. And the question really is, what do we do about that? Because, in fact, as I go back to my first point, we have agency. We have an ability to interact and deal with this particular situation. There are clearly problems with many areas of government policy and many dysfunctional institutions of government, but we as a society don't have to live with them like that. We can change them. So the question is, what are we going to do about them? That is part of what we have. But if we engage, we have to make sure that we engage in a way that is productive. And it is unproductive to exploit disparities in society for short-term political purposes, which are centered around gaining power exclusively or private gain. What we want to do is to make sure that when we're addressing these disparities and attempting to achieve the objective of greater social cohesion, we are doing so productively in the interests of society as a whole. And that becomes the challenge, because you can't really control what people do. And in many cases, people just make use of this to deepen the gaps that we have in society rather than narrow them.
Very quick one, Professor, because I'm just going to ride off that final point that you made there, because it is quite crucial. Then it becomes, how important then is political influence in nation building? And when we speak of this influence, we're actually referring to the political narrative that is currently being preached by the various political parties in the country. Are they promoting this nation building and unity, you think?
I think that we have conversations which do promote it, and we have conversations which expressly oppose social cohesion and are unproductive conversations in society. So the productive ones are where you actually try to solve deep problems, where you're actually seriously focused on those. But what the problem that you'd always have is that in many cases, politics is about the people who are in positions, is about the people in positions of official power in society. And sometimes gaining that official power is done through nefarious reasons, and puts the wrong people. There's a temptation to basically gain power through exploiting weaknesses in society rather than in attempting to close gaps. So I think that it's always going to be there. There is never going to be a time when you're going to have only good actors trying to be in government. That's never going to happen. What you're going to have is always a tension between people who are doing bad things for short-term gains and people who are thinking long-term. The question is whether, in the way in which we structure our conversations in society, we are giving way to the people with only short-term, crude, private interest objectives. And I think that having public narratives and discussions that help us differentiate between who's just exploiting, who's taking advantage, who's just trying to gain power for their own private gain, and distinguishing between those people and the people in government and positions of official power who are actually trying to do things and reflecting the interests of society more broadly. It's not an easy thing, because it's so easy just to respond to hate speech and hate conversations.
Professor, thank you so much. As always, great input there. That is Professor Alex Van Den Heever there from the Wits School of Governance on Freedom Day.